So you've built an awesome website, it's packed with great content, and you're using Amazon S3 to store all your assets. Perfect. But here's the million-dollar question. Should you serve those assets directly from S3, or do you need something like CloudFront? It's a classic dilemma, and, making the wrong call here could be secretly crippling your site's speed for half your visitors.
Just think about that for a second. Your site might load in a blink of an eye for you, but what about that person trying to access it from the other side of the planet? That little bit of lag, that latency, it's so much more than just a minor annoyance. It can seriously mess with your user experience, your SEO, and even your revenue.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the core delivery dilemma. Then we'll dive into what S3 is really for. We're going to uncover a really surprising performance paradox. You'll love this, where being closer is somehow slower. After that, we'll see how CloudFront completely changes the game, put them head-to-head on things like cost and security, and then wrap up with a super simple guide to help you pick the perfect fit.
At the end of the day, this is really a physics problem, right? How do you get a chunk of data from point A to point B across thousands of miles without making the person at point B wait forever? It's the fundamental challenge for pretty much every website in our totally connected world.
And I'm not just being dramatic here. We're talking about real-world impact. Study after study shows that even tiny delays make people leave a site. I mean, for giants like Google and Amazon, a half-second delay can cause a real measurable drop in traffic. In this game, every single millisecond matters. And that brings us to our first contender, Amazon S3. A lot of people start here. It just feels obvious. You store your files in S3, so why not serve them from there too? But is it actually built for high-speed delivery? The best way to think about S3 is as this massive, super durable, and pretty affordable hard drive that lives in the cloud. It is fantastic, absolutely amazing for storing stuff. Images, videos, backups, you name it. Its main job is storage and retrieval. It's designed for insane reliability, not necessarily for instantaneous worldwide delivery. Okay, so this is the crucial part to understand. S3 is regional. When you make an S3 bucket, you have to pick a place for it, like, say, Virginia. Now, if your user is in London or Tokyo, their request has to physically travel all the way across the ocean to Virginia and all the way back. That round trip takes time, and that time is what we call latency. Now, you'd probably assume that even with that distance, using a specialized Amazon service like S3 would be faster than just serving files from your own little web server. Well, the real data shows something kind of mind-blowing, a genuine performance paradox. Let's make this real. We're going to look at a benchmark test. We've got a web server in New York. We're going to see how long it takes to load one image from 3 places: the web server itself, an S3 bucket nearby, and CloudFront. And we'll check the speed from 2 spots, nearby Philadelphia and way over in Singapore. Whoa! Okay, here is the first big shock. For the user in Philadelphia, who's practically next door to the server, loading that image directly from S3 was actually slower. It took 234 milliseconds, while the original web server did it in 140. CloudFront was the fastest, sure, but the real story here is how slow S3 was. And this just nails it. The team who ran this test summed it up perfectly. Yikes. It tells you everything you need to know. S3 is optimized for storing things safely, not necessarily for the super low latency delivery you need for web assets, especially when you're comparing it to a well-tuned web server. Okay, but now watch what happens when we jump over to the user in Singapore. The web server and S3 are just crawling. We're talking over 1.5 seconds to load one image. And CloudFront, just 200 milliseconds. That's not just a little faster, that's an absolutely massive game-changing difference. It's like 8 times faster.
Let's just sit with that number for a moment. 1,672 milliseconds, over 1.5 seconds. Now imagine your web page has 10, 20, 30 images. That site would feel completely broken to that user in Singapore. This is the global delivery dilemma in real life.
So how on earth did CloudFront pull off that incredible speed? Well, this brings us to our second player. And it's not really a competitor to S3, it's more like its superpowered partner. It's a purpose-built global accelerator. CloudFront is what we call a content delivery network, or CDN. Think of it like this. Instead of having one giant warehouse for your stuff in Virginia, you have hundreds of little pop-up shops all over the world. It grabs a copy of your files from S3 and stashes it in over 225 of these edge locations. So when your user in Singapore asks for that image, they don't have to call Virginia. They get it from a local server right there in Asia. Problem solved.
All right, let's put them in the ring for a direct comparison. And remember, this isn't about which one is better overall. It's about which tool is the right tool for your specific job. We'll look at performance, security, cost, the whole shebang.
This little table gives us a great bird's eye view. S3 Direct Access is really only for a localized audience. CloudFront is built for a global one. But here's a huge one, security. CloudFront easily gives you HTTPS on your own domain. S3 Direct just can't do that. The only tiny place S3 has an edge is if your files change every few seconds, because those changes are instant. CloudFront can have a short delay while it updates all its pop-up shops.
Now let's talk about money, because this is interesting. At really, really low traffic volumes, S3 might look a tiny bit cheaper on paper. But as soon as your traffic starts to grow, CloudFront's data transfer rates actually become cheaper. And here's the absolute killer feature. The data transfer from your S3 bucket to CloudFront is totally free. You only pay when CloudFront sends it out to your user. The security conversation is, for me, a deal breaker. If you want to use your own domain, something like assets.yourwebsite.com, and serve your content securely over HTTPS, which, trust me, you absolutely do, you can't do it with S3 alone. You need CloudFront. That little padlock icon in the browser is everything. It builds trust, and Google loves it for your SEO rankings.
Okay, so we've looked at the benchmarks, the features, the cost, the security. Let's boil all this down into a really simple guide so you can make the right call for your project without any guesswork.
Here's the bottom line. You should probably only stick with S3 Direct Access if and only if your audience is all in the same city as your bucket and your traffic is absolutely tiny. For basically everyone else, if you have a global audience, if speed is critical, if you need proper HTTPS security, or if you're serving any real amount of data, CloudFront is the way to go. It's just the modern standard.
And this really says it all, doesn't it? As the team at WP Offload Media concluded, for any kind of larger audience, using a CDN isn't a luxury. It's a no-brainer. S3 is your amazing, reliable storage foundation. But CloudFront? That's your high-speed delivery engine. So there we have it. We've totally solved the problem of getting your content out to your users at lightning speed. But that leaves one final interesting question. What's the fastest way to get your content into S3 in the first place, especially if you're uploading from all over the world? Well, that's a whole other story for another day.